Okay, I think we're good to go. All right. So as I stated, you're here for Grants and Strategy Office Hours. So if you are not here for this, you're in the wrong Zoom. I hope you are here for this because I'm ready to go. All right. First of all, a little introduction on who I am. This will be helpful just so you can see that I do know what I am talking about. And if you have any questions, I can help you with any of those questions. But if we have any experts in grant writing in the group today, please feel free to also share your information and your experience in the side chat. Sometimes we'll have people who come on who have experience and actually can help fill in some of the blanks when I'm doing the presentation. And so that's also great. Thank you so much for that. I have over 25 years of experience in administration and supervision. My name is Luz Ramirez. I am a member of the Gator Sub 2 and Owners Club community. My experience has been in the field of education, in nonprofit, and also in retail. My journey and everything I've done really has allowed me to build my skill sets in organizational growth, where I have done quite a few different things. I've led and managed nonprofit acquisitions and mergers. I've stabilized organizations. I've created departments and programs. I pride myself in being a developer and builder of people and teams. I love being creative and finding ways to make things happen. As a result of everything that I've done, I became a grant writer. That was not my intention ever. It just happened to be something that I had to do in order to be able to grow and create programs and build departments. I'm a past university professor. I have been a trainer of domestic violence for partner abusers, implicit bias and cultural competency. And last but not least, my passion is performing. I grew up performing since I was 3 years old, and I love to dance just about, well, I used to. I'm a little too old for that now, but I used to dance everything and anything. You name it, I danced it. African, flamenco, did tap, jazz, ballet, all the fun stuff. Anyway, now in my world, I'm a full-time entrepreneur and investor. I am a wife and a mother of a 17-year-old daughter who is going off to college next year and a 12-year-old son. My parents came from Colombia in 1970, and so I am a first-generation U.S. born and first college graduate in my family. My parents insisted on me learning to speak, read, and write Spanish. And part of that was traveling to my home country, which is Colombia, every other year to visit family. And as a result, I can truly say that I'm bilingual and bicultural. My parents forced me to speak, read, and write Spanish, so I would do homework in English once I got home from school, and then I would have to do my Spanish homework for my parents. So it was basically a double education that I received. So I'm able to move seamlessly between both cultures. I only share this because that background and experience that I had on my journey really formed a big part of everything that I have done through today. So every employment opportunity that I had was a result of my bilingualism. So I highlight that because to me, it's where it has taken me on my journey and where I am today as a result of that. So what is a grant? A grant is basically free money, and it is free money. And I know many people will say, well, there's nothing free in life. Well, grants are actually free money. However, there are strings attached to it. You don't just get money uh, just like that without having to do some things. But the requirements that you have to meet really are very minimal compared to what you can actually receive in funding and what you can actually accomplish with the funding. So the money does not have to be paid back unless you do not meet the requirements that they have. Okay. The money can come from government agencies, foundations, and corporations. They must be used for public good, not personal profit. Okay. So some examples could be housing for vulnerable populations, neighborhood revitalization, housing education, and community development. Those are just simple examples, but we can go into detail on what does housing for vulnerable populations mean. There could be funding for veterans. There could be funding for families fleeing domestic violence. On the neighborhood revitalization, what could that look like? What could you receive funding from? Well, many cities are looking to revitalize their downtown area, and they actually could set money aside that they receive from the federal government or from the state in order to help developers help revitalize their neighborhoods. Housing education. This is, again, funding for individuals who are looking to maybe purchase their first home. There is a lot of information there that somebody coming from being a renter to being a first homeowner doesn't know, so that could be education. Others could be education for families who are struggling to stay in their home. So these are all options of grant funding that could be available, and they're made available again through the different sources that I mentioned earlier, which is government agencies, foundations, and corporations. Can grants fund real estate? So this is a question that we get all the time and that I get all the time. And yes, uh, grants can fund real estate, but only if it meets certain requirements. So one is that the project benefits the public or a specific population. I already mentioned earlier veterans. I mentioned families fleeing domestic violence. Those are special specific populations, and there may be funding available specific to those populations. That the owner is a nonprofit or partners with one. So somebody pursuing grants, if they are already have a nonprofit established, that is usually one of the eligibility pieces for a grant. The other one, and again, it depends on the type of grant that you're pursuing. Other grants could be that you could partner up with a nonprofit. And so that then allows you to be part of that grant application. And if it's a grant application that's only available, let's say it could be available for developers. You do not have to have a nonprofit and you do not have to be partnered with a nonprofit, but you have to be developing a property or housing for specific populations. So they will say in that grant application, you are a developer, we'll give you the funding for you to develop this property. However, it has to be designated for X population. Okay. And then the other is if you tie real estate to a mission. So, for example, if your mission is to build affordable housing or veterans or recover. So, there's lots of different examples there on how you can have access to grants if you are doing real estate. So, there are some common myths about grants, and I want to cover those. The first one is that grants are just for nonprofits. I already covered that slightly, that it's mostly true. However, partnerships can help. So if you are partnered up with a nonprofit, you have the ability to apply for grants, and it does improve your chances of securing the grant funding, and it also improves the chances for the nonprofit. So oftentimes a nonprofit will apply for funding for a specific population, and the grant could say, this funding is available for you to provide support for any barrier reduction, support for housing, support for, and on and on and on. And they could add housing in there, but one of the problems that we are seeing across the board is that there is a lack of housing. And we know this as investors. We see that there's a lack of affordable housing, and nonprofits are seeing the same problem. So when they apply for funds for their programs, they can't find the housing. So it doesn't matter that if they secure grant funding for housing, they don't have anywhere to place their clients or their participants from their programs. So one way that could be beneficial to nonprofits is that a real estate investor can partner up with the nonprofit and say, look, you apply for the funding and we'll supply the housing for you. So it's a win-win because now this application for the nonprofit is much stronger because not only will they receive the funding, but they already have somebody to place their participants because you would be providing that housing piece. And then another piece that I like to talk about is, let's say that the nonprofit is not interested in doing any housing or paying for housing. The nonprofit could serve as a fiscal sponsor to you. How does that benefit the nonprofit? Nonprofits are usually very reliant on grant funding, and the rest of the funding that they bring into the organization is usually through charitable events or fundraising. So being a fiscal sponsor to an application for an organization or a company or a business that is going to be providing a service for a population that they serve can benefit them because they can get a percentage of the funding that's coming out. So as a fiscal sponsor, they could allocate 10% of the administration fiscal budgeting fee to the application. They get that. They are processing all the applications and submitting all the reports for you. And you as the partner in the application are the recipient of the funding, but the nonprofit is the pass-through. So as the fiscal sponsor, they are the pass-through of the funds, and they are also the pass-through for any reporting that needs to be done. So for them, they need to stay on top of making sure that you are submitting reports and doing the spend down as required for the grant that you submitted with them. All right, then grants take forever to apply for. So that is true, some do, but many are short-term or rolling, or they are rolling applications. So you're going to see this really dependent on what type of application it is. So it is if it's an application for a state or government entity, you're going to find that they do take a longer time to grant the application and the funding to go through the grant and funding process. One, they might have a lot of recipients. Two, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to the federal government, federal and state. And they also will only release grants in cycles. So what you're going to find is usually they will release grants in early spring, and then the second cycle is early fall. They release a NOFA or a NOFO or an RFP. These are all acronyms, and they all pretty much stand for the same thing. The RFP is a request for proposal, and a NOFA or NOFO is a notice of funding opportunity. Notice of funding opportunity, NOFO, or notice of funding application. So these are all ways that this is the actual application and notice that they put out there with all the rules and regulations and eligibility and the criteria of what they're looking for you to be able to submit an application. So when those are released, as the person applying, that's what you want to look at and find out if you're eligible or not, and then any timelines or any information that is pertinent to you submitting an application. So that is where you find out what that timeline is. And sometimes you'll see that they release it on a certain date, then about a month or 2 weeks later, they do a TA, which is a technical assistance session, and then they give you another couple or few weeks to ask questions. Then after that time goes by, then they give you a certain amount of time to write the application and submit it. So now we're into about 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And then there is a period after you submit the application that they have for review. So that's another 4 weeks to 6 weeks where they review. They have a panel that reads through every one of the applications. They score it, and then they make decisions on the final ones, and then they do a release of the grant awardees. So it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. Oftentimes, even after you're notified that the application has been granted, then there's a contract period or there's a negotiation period. So what we find often is that you may have applied, let's say if you applied for $1 million, they come back and they award you, but they're only going to award you $500,000. So now you have to negotiate with them and go back and forth. Basically, the negotiation is they're telling you that this is the amount you're getting, and then you have to revise your budget, you have to revise your program plan, your timeline, everything to match the funding that you are now going to be awarded. You send that back, and then they will then do an approval of that new budget, the new program, and then they will then award you those funds. And then there's a whole contracting process that goes behind that, where you sign a contract agreeing to the funds that they're giving you, and you're committing to all the deliverables. So yes, so the grant process can take a long time. When I said it could be short-term or rolling application, I was referring to applications that have to do with maybe a foundation or a corporation. These tend to be smaller applications, less funding that you could receive. And rolling applications means that they're making them available constantly. So maybe every month they put a new application out. And any given time of the year, you can go in, you can see that the application is open, you submit it, and then it will be awarded monthly or awarded quarterly. And then you can't make money for grants is the third myth, and that is actually not true. You should not be making money off of the grants in the sense of you apply for it and then now you're just going to walk away with a chunk of money. You obviously have to write yourself into the grant as an employee, so it could be salary, it could be contractor pay, or you could structure income through the nonprofit ownership or actual partnerships. So I talked about that on this office hours, I wanted to focus on government, foundation, and corporate grants. So these are the 3 different types of grants that exist. I covered a little bit about government and how those operate, just to highlight that they are larger awards and they can come from many places. They don't necessarily have to come directly from the federal government or the state, okay? There tends to be very strict compliance with these grants. There is heavy reporting, and you will be given allowable costs, and there sometimes is a procurement process. So at the federal government level, there usually is a procurement process, and then through the state level, there could be, other times there isn't. It just depends on how many levels there are removed between the original grantor and the grantee. So why do I say that? A lot of grants will come from federal government initially. So it could be a huge grant award given out to maybe 10 entities. And one of those entities could be the state. So the state can go and apply for it, or it could be a very large organization, nonprofit that works across the United States or across the world. They receive the bulk of the grant funding that's available. And then those entities can then do a smaller grant process. They can say take some of those funds for themselves for a project that they're doing within the realm of what they applied for, but they can also do smaller grants out to cities, to nonprofits, to municipalities, to and all kinds of different ways that they want to release it. But it's their decision on how they want to do it. But that is also part of the larger application that they submitted to the federal government. So if the federal government received an initial application from, let's say, the state said, we are going to use these funds to start X program for the state. But we're also going to grant out smaller grants to different cities or different nonprofits so that they can also deliver services to do this, this, and that. And so then they do smaller grant awards. But again, depending on the layer and where you are, the federal government might have requirements for the state. The state will have different types of requirements for the smaller applications that they've awarded out. And then moving on to foundations, they are more flexible. They tend to be relationship driven. So this is where you establish a relationship with a foundation. They know what your mission is. They know what you're working on. And so then that kind of improves your chances of being awarded a grant based on what's available. So that relationship is really, really important. And then the size in grant award is also very different. They could be very small. They could be very large. It just depends on what the foundation is focused on. It depends on maybe how much fundraising they did that year or who their funders are for their particular grants that they are awarding. Other times you'll find foundations that they are the primary foundation in the city or the county, but they work with multiple individuals in the community who have foundations set within the larger foundation. So they might have an area that they like to award funds for. Maybe their passion project is animals or animal rescue. And so the foundation is in charge of ensuring that those grants are awarded only to individuals who are working on programming or providing services for animal rescue. So it kind of goes dependent on what the topic or theme or area or category is that an individual wants to fund, and then what you are providing. And then the last one is corporate. Corporations have a fiduciary duty to try and give back to the communities that they are operating in. And so this is where you might be able to apply for grants that are eligible through them for projects or activities that you're doing within the community. So what we see often is if there is a large corporation that has their home office in a particular city, they will have awards, grants to be able to give out to that community so that they're demonstrating that they're giving back to the community that is that where they reside in. So one of the things that they do is, they look for brand alignment. They look for employee engagement. So sometimes their employees are the ones that are involved in bringing in the individuals who want to apply for the funds. So building relationships with employees of the corporations is important. These tend to be shorter cycle grants. Sometimes they're a couple months, sometimes they're a year. And then there's often a sponsorship and small grant combination, where if you receive this funding from us, we expect you to let us sponsor or we'll be a sponsor of one of your events. So again, that can go hand in hand with, charity events, fundraising, fund development. This one is more for, works very closely for nonprofits, but I think also as developers, you can tap into this, or as housing providers, you can tap into corporate. How to know if you qualify. So this is just very high level, but honestly, what it comes down to is, are you solving a problem for a specific group? If you are, then you could definitely qualify for grants. Do you have a nonprofit or do you want to create one? If you have a nonprofit, that's great. So you can use that and that allows you access to a lot more funding. Do you want to create one? Okay, that's a whole other area. That's great. There are many people who have a passion and want to start a nonprofit, and that can be done as well. And then again, that gives you access to more grant funding. However, I personally, having run nonprofits, having worked in nonprofits and seeing the funding side of nonprofits and that you can actually partner on funding, on accessing grants, I don't think it's necessary. When you do start a nonprofit, you're still running a business. And so if you have a business already and now you're going to start a nonprofit, you're running a second business. So you have to keep that in mind. The other piece of a nonprofit is that if you start a nonprofit, you cannot charge everything to run your nonprofit to grants. Okay, the operating expenses, you can only charge a percentage. Usually the maximum is 10%. And you cannot rely on all grant funding to come in and pay for all your operations, your overhead costs, your utilities, where you house your business, where you house your services. You cannot count on that. So you are going to have to do some kind of fundraising or have a foundation that supports your nonprofit. So if you already have that set up, then that's great. If you have a business that's donating into giving to a nonprofit, and then that nonprofit is the one that you're going to use to be able to go after grants, that's wonderful. And that can be set up as well. And then the other one option is, or are you partnering with a nonprofit? This is the one that I recommend for you if you're not looking to take on a completely whole other business that it's not related to your business. I would partner with a nonprofit, and I already mentioned earlier how you can do that. And are you willing to serve and report outcomes? So this is the piece that is the catch or the aha. You're not just going to get free money without something. You have to be willing to provide reports and to be able to demonstrate what the outcomes are. One of them is when you go in to request funding, you have to state what you're going to use the funds for. You have to be very clear on, I'm going to spend this amount for this. I'm going to spend this amount for this amount for this. If you do not put it in the grant application and in your budget, and it's not part of your plan, then it cannot be used for any of your project. Okay, so if it's on the budget and if it's in the plan, then you can use it. And then you have to then demonstrate that you spent that money according to your budget and according to your plan. And that is one of the reports that you do either monthly or quarterly. And then when you do your plan for your project, you also have to be able to put in there some measurable outcomes, your KPIs. What is the outcome of the funding that we are giving you? What are you implementing, and what are we expecting to see? Because they're not going to give you the funding just for the sake of giving you the funding. If your project is going to go to housing, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I'm going to rehab a property so that I can provide housing to 50 veterans. And in the process, we are going to partner with a nonprofit, and we're going to provide education on how they can begin making additional income to supplement themselves and to become self-sufficient. And the outcome of that will be to ensure that 35 of the housed veterans will be self-sufficient by the end of the grant project. And so that is what I would be putting in as my outcome of what I'm looking to do. Okay. So that is the end of that. Again, very highlight of what grants are. I do want to address questions, do some Q&A. And in this one, I was going to cover a little bit about the different types of grants that you could apply for, so we can focus on that. I'm willing to take questions on anything else as well, but that one is the topic that I wanted to cover here. For moving forward on other office hours, I do want to cover different topics, and we can go into detail on other questions that you might have. This is just a little bit of information on me. That's my QR code to my Blink, and then my email. Actually, I changed my email, so ignore that, scratch that. It's actually lrglobalconsulting@gmail.com. I apologize for that. I did not update it, but you can follow me on Instagram, and then my YouTube is also at Luz Ramirez Consulting. Stop sharing. All right. Hi, everyone. Wow, many more people in the room. Thank you for joining me. All right, feel free to raise your hand or ask questions. I'm going to take a look at the chat real quick and see if there's anything in here that I need to address. But in the meantime, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, I am opening up office hours for questions and answers. Oh, thank you, Io. Love you. I just saw your comment. Okay, I see some people had bad connection. Sorry about that. I hope not. It's good, but I have to jump off. Okay. All right. I am caught up with questions. Dr. Tammy, yes.
So, Luz, where would you suggest looking for grants? What are the resources? I've used Grants Watch, and I signed up for, I think, government ones as well. Are there other resources that you use?
Those are great resources. I like to go to directly to grants.gov. That one though, if you're going to go into grants.gov, um, it's a little scary and intimidating because there are a lot of grants and you have to know really what you're looking for. So it's a lot of searching and searching and searching and searching and kind of, doing, okay, I'm going to check for this and I'm going to check for this
Mm,
and going in different keywords. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not big on going after federal grants. And I'll tell you why. One, they are huge, which is great. But they are looking, the grants usually go for very, very large groups or corporations or entities
okay.
or nonprofits that have a lot of experience and have a large capacity to be able to deliver the large amounts of grant funding. So what you're going to
Okay.
find is that let's say a state will apply or a federal court system, they might apply, and then they can do smaller grants out to within the state, like I mentioned earlier. So, however, I don't discard that as a resource because what I like to do is I like to go into the federal grants that they have awarded or what's available. And then I know what my area is that I'm focusing on. So I will niche down and see what grants they've made available. And then I will see who was awarded. And then I will do a trail. I will follow the trail, the trail of breadcrumbs of, oh, they awarded this organization or they awarded this nonprofit. So now I go and I look at that nonprofit and I see what they did with the funding. And if they granted the funding out, I find out who they granted it to. So it's a lot of research and it's a lot of finding out what they did with the funds, but there is excellent information in there because now I'm getting information from them on what they're looking for funding, what types of projects they're funding, what types of projects already received the funding, and what I could potentially go after. Okay. So that
Okay.
leads me to other places. Once I niche that down further, now I have a better idea of who I can go to for applying for a grant that's closer to me. And by closer, it could be my city, it could be my county, it could be a nonprofit that operates within my community or in my state. That just kind of helps me identify a little bit better where to go. Does that
So
help?
is there a, yes, I just definitely, of course. Um, but having to do all of that takes a lot of time.
Yes.
So there's not like a website where it would have like grants for your state or, for your county. Is there websites for that?
Yes. They all not there is not one website compiling everything. You have to go to your county, you have to go to your state, you have
Okay.
to go
Okay.
and the state, for example, I've written many, many grants that I secured through the state of Illinois, and they're all put out there. They've been trying to make it uniform. So they now have what they call GATA. They have all these systems that they've been trying to make it all so that you have one place to go, but it's taking years to get there. So little by little, they've been working on that process. But what you have to do now, they have it set up so you can go to one place for grants, but they're all divided by departments. So whatever department your area would fall under, that's where you would go. The state
Okay.
also has it set up so that the Department of Economic Development, has one area for grants. The Department for X, Y, and Z has the grants. So you do still have to do the searching.
Okay.
So grant writers, they earn their money. I'll tell you that. Because
Yeah, I'm
not
sure.
many people like to do the research and not many people like to do the hunting and searching. And that's actually a lot of the work that has to get done upfront is trying to figure out where you're going to find these grants and narrowing it down. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. So it would be like state, county, city, and the type that you're
Yeah. So what's your niche? What's your area that you're looking for? And then I also
transition
look on transitional housing
housing. Mm-hmm.
for what
Yeah, and
population?
women that are
Okay.
recently been released from
Reincarceration.
prison.
I mean, reentry. Okay.
Yeah,
So
reentry. Mm-hmm.
So you have a niche that you're specifically working on. So what I do is I go out there and I search under everything. I search
Okay.
I would search under housing available for women, housing available for reentry, housing available for blah, 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 rehab for, affordable housing. I would look for everything, for all the different areas that you could potentially be working with. Okay.
Okay.
And then you narrow it down. I like to start local. I always say start local. So I know that with my city, I check and see if the city is going to be, it has any funding set aside for the population I'm working with. Then I check with the county. I check locally with my the local community foundation. There is a
Oh,
foundation here that has they have I can't think of the term right now, but there are individuals who have created their own foundation within this foundation, and every year or every month or every quarter, I don't know how it is, they donate to this, they put money into this account. And so then the foundation awards these funds out. And maybe I could find somebody there who had an interest in helping women with housing from reentry. So see, you have to look for all the possible types of funding with all the different places. If you have a prison or a large or a jail in your community, find out from them. Is there anybody that you know that does work with this and provides funding for this? Do you know of any philanthropists that this is a passion project for them? Okay, so I start small and then I go big.
okay. Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate that.
you're welcome. All right, Henry,
Yes, good afternoon. How are you?
good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. So, yeah, I've been anticipating this call for some time now. Uh, I'm working with a nonprofit for several weeks now, months, and it's sober living, and they have 9 homes at the moment, and they're expanding into Dallas. But what they really need, and I want, frankly, I'd partnership with them because I feel very comfortable with this organization. They're both it's run by two doctors of their psychiatric fields. One is children, the other one is adults. So, and they're very passionate about sober living. So I think they've tried getting some grants, but the person that's doing it for them is just uneducated with the grants. Okay.
Mhm.
So my question is it something that you would help us with? Is it something that you could, if I could get that information from what they have done prior and maybe refine it, maybe help them try to get clarity? I mean, what you just presented, holy mackerel, this is just, all the slides just point to, this is a great opportunity for them to get grants. They really are. And what their focus is now, as opposed to continuing to grow individual homes, they want a centralized location. They want to buy a nursing facility, for instance, and house 100 people in that facility, as opposed to, you know, homes all across San Antonio and Dallas. And so they just need some direction. And I told him I was going to be on this call this week. And man, I would love for you to help, or somebody in your organization to kind of give us, I am willing to do the work. I just need some guidance.
Absolutely. So I put my link up earlier. Feel free to reach out to me. I do actually my side hustle. I'm a real estate investor. That's what my focus is. But my side hustle is helping people with grant writing. So I'm doing consulting, and I have some retainer packages where I do coaching and I can help guide the way. So anybody who wants to do it and they just need some guidance, I can provide that. So that is
Cool.
not a problem. But go ahead and reach out to me separately. I will actually.
Yeah,
Let
you
me just
said your
find
email
it.
address had changed.
Yeah,
You
I'll put
mind-
my email in here.
All right, thank you. And I've been trying to get a hold of you through Discord. So I know you're probably very busy. But if you see my name, just
I've seen your name and I'm glad that you were able to make it in here. I think I've responded to your messages. So,
okay. All right.
but
Yeah.
yes, feel free to reach out and then we can talk about what your needs are. But yeah, feel free to come in here and ask any questions you have. And if you need some guidance and if you need actually more hands-on, then I can definitely provide that for you.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? All right.
Yo, Luz, ¿cómo le va?
Bien, Karina, hola, welcome.
Thank you. Um, So I have a question in regards, do you know any affordable grants? I mean, any grants for affordable housing in San Diego County?
So that's very specific. You would have to, I would start looking at the city. Check the city website and see what they have for grants. I would also check their work plan or their economic development plan, what plan the city has in place for housing. And if there's anything written in there for affordable housing. That's where I start. So in my city locally, I know that the passion project for my mayor is domestic violence. They started a family peace center, which is a one-stop shop for any family fleeing domestic violence. They can go to the center and they can get all the help that they need from many different resources within the community. So the agencies co-locate within this peace center so that the family fleeing doesn't have to go to all the different agencies across the city. So this is a project that he put in place when he first took office. Now they've created it, they have it there, but now they've discovered that they have a need for transitional housing to house these families. So what they did is that they took a huge chunk of money from one of the grants that they received from the federal government. They set it aside and they said, this is designated to provide housing for families fleeing domestic violence, and we want transitional housing developed here. So they contacted me, and I'm actually working on that project with them. But that, again, that is the city making a decision of putting it in their plan that they want to focus on this target population, and they want to provide affordable, safe, transitional housing for this particular population. So they put it into their funding and their plan. So what you need to do is check and see if your city has done the same thing. And if they haven't done it specific for certain populations, or maybe they have, maybe there's a specific population, or maybe in general it's just affordable housing or rehabbing for dilapidated buildings, or they're looking to revitalize their, downtown area. It just depends on what that plan is for your city. So I would start there. The other area that I would look at is what population are you looking to serve? And then start looking for groups, organizations, corporations, foundations that serve those populations. Remember that the way to get grant funding is that you are serving a specific population, a target population, or you are solving a problem. So what is the problem that you're looking to solve? Okay. And then who has a passion to solve that problem? So that's where you're connecting all those dots. Okay. Let's see. And then I would look at the state as well. Look at the state of California and then look at the federal government. But yes, there are grants. You just have to go look for them and know where to find them. Sometimes it's not going to be in your community. It's not going to be your city. Sometimes it's going to be it is going to be a special interest group that is going to say, this is the population that we're working to solve housing for, and we are making funds available for it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ayo. Hello.
Hi, Luz. Thank you for this. This is great. I just took a look at the grants.gov and it's like way more extensive than I thought.
Oh, it's insane.
It's insane. Yeah, thank you. So, you kind of mentioned figuring out who's already doing the work or serving the population that you're also trying to serve. And that kind of leads into my question about, is there a way to, instead of going after the grant as the principal grantee, figuring out who's already been awarded or pretty much like a front runner to some of these grants that we can kind of reach out to and partner with? And do you have tips on that? Or is it one of those things where if they've already been given the grant, then their team is already built out and they wouldn't need, let's say, an investor partner or a developer partner or something like that?
Not necessarily. Like I said, oftentimes they do not have. So I'll give you my example. When I applied for grants, if there was an opportunity for me to find the partner before I applied for the grant, I would do that. Oftentimes I knew that there was a need, so I identified the need. My population that I was serving had this need. There's a gap. It doesn't exist. So that's the other thing that I always do when I write a grant is I make sure that that service or the project is not already being offered or covered by another entity, another group. I don't like duplicating services. I don't like duplicating projects. So I make sure first off that I'm not duplicating And I would actually intentionally reach out to other groups that I knew were maybe serving the same population or maybe doing some work in that arena of the gap that I was trying to fill. And I would ask them, hey, this grant is available. Are you applying or are you interested in partnering? I'm looking to apply for it. Okay. And then again, it's a communication of my community. I reach out to all the individuals, all the organizations, all the groups that I know that I've been working with for so many years. And then that way we eliminated any duplication, and we sometimes would have partnerships. They would jump on board with me in my application, or they would say, no, you know what, we are applying. Would you like to partner with us? And then you can provide the service that you provide. Okay.
And then
So
do you reach out to
that's-
the, do you
Mhm.
like identify the ED, or is there usually somebody in a nonprofit or foundation that's the best person?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it depends on how long you've been in the community, who you're working with, and if you get to know who the individuals are. So oftentimes I would go to the ED. Other times, if I knew that, let's say, I know who the grant writer is for the federal court system, I would go to her because that's who I always worked with. And I knew that she was the one bringing all the partnerships together. She was the one making the decision if she was writing that application or not. On other occasions, I would go to the administrator of the city who was working on that particular project, or doing that, or doing economic development for housing. However, you really look at who does what and who would be the closest touch point to what you're looking to do. Okay. And if you have access to the ED or the CEO and you don't have access to anybody else, but you already know this person or you have access to them, start there, and then they will get you to the right person.
Is there
Mhm.
like a published list, like when awards are granted, is there a list that's provided publicly on who got them?
In federal and grants.gov in the federal government, they will list who gets awarded.
Okay.
I actually have a Google alert on my calendar, on my Googles, for whenever anything comes up with housing, or anything comes up with grants, or anything comes up with a particular grant application that maybe I wanted to get more information about, I put that Google alert out there. And so anytime something gets announced, and they always announce the awardees. So that pops up, and then I go in and look at it, and then I get to pull everybody who received the award, and then I know who to go after. So if they applied in Illinois and this organization received that funding, they received $5 million, and they're going to do this, this, and this, and I already know that because I know what grant I'm looking for. Then I'm like, ooh, I know who to contact. So now I dig deeper, and then I contact them. I cannot get their current application, but I can go in the past and look at past grant applications and be able to get a better idea of what the program looked like and what they got funded for.
It's amazing.
Okay.
So good. Thank
Did
you.
I answer your original question? I feel like I. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it was just strategies on how to find the nonprofit partners or the foundation partners. So you covered it really well. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. We have about 12 minutes left. Anybody else have questions that I can go ahead and answer for you and address?
It will be a great, this is a suggestion, and I don't know if that can happen, but it will be a great way, to find a way for owners to have all this data in each city, and have a website in which we can put and then we can collaborate with our city's developer, CEO or AD or whatever, and then have that data for us to know what they need, and then we ask the owners who is willing to do it. It will be great. That's a
That would
dream.
be great. That would be great, but that would be very time. What's the word? It would take a lot of time to put that together, and I know this is not part of Owners Club per se, to make a platform available for grants and whatnot. So this is just kind of like a bonus Zoom where I can help educate people on the opportunity to be able to access grants, and then provide a little bit of information on how you can try and pursue them yourself as well, and just to educate. So I love the idea, but yeah, that's probably not going to, I don't see anybody dedicating staff from New Reach Education to put together that platform, which would be great.
It will
Thank you,
be
Karina.
great.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and I know that the Skip is one of the platforms that does that for
Yes, you
business
did talk
owners?
about that. Yes, if you
Yes.
want to put that in the chat, go ahead and put it there. I know that you and I talked about a grant platform that she uses. Mhm. All right.
Mhm.
Vanessa, good question. I don't know if Pace GPT has information because I haven't put any information in there. And I don't think that's not something that 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 the creative world of Pace Morby has incorporated. I'm the only one who really has talked about grants, and Pace always points me out as the grant expert. You know, I laugh because I'm like, okay, he says the number one grant writer in the U.S. Okay, that's a joke. So that when you guys hear him say that, that's a joke. Okay, he says that, but the number one writer. I have acquired more than $40 million in grants, though. So, um, Vanessa, you had a question? Okay, she might have changed her mind. All right. But with the Pace GPT, oh, thank you, Henry. With Pace GPT, though, I mean, I guess I could start inputting information in there. I know that that's one of the things that we've been asked to do is to input information that we have that we're knowledgeable on or we're working on. So I can start putting some of that information in there. And maybe the Zooms. I don't know if these office hours, if Pace GPT is going to be extracting information from the Zooms. That might be happening too. And I'm not sure. I guess I would need to learn more about that. Well, thank you all for all the great questions. I still have a little bit of time left here, so I can entertain additional questions. Thank you, Karina. She put that link in there for Hello Skip. That is to access grants. I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I know we talked about this and I hadn't had a chance to look at it, but I would like to do that at some point. Other sources that I would say you can go into your county, you go into your city, and then look for economic development. I am always tying economic development and community engagement with grants because usually when they receive the funding that they're getting, they get CDBG grants, which is community development block grants. This is a funding source that the cities will receive, and they are able to put that to work within their community to help do development. And so the development could look very differently for each city. And as I stated before, a passion project for our mayor is domestic violence, but in another city, it could be different. They could be looking to revitalize their downtown, or they could be looking to create more workforce housing. So that plan that they put in place really is going to dictate where their funds are going to be invested. And so that's an opportunity for every single one of you as an investor to try and find some funding that could be used for your project. And then I know we have talked in the past about development funds available by the state of California. And so there was a very large grant that we were looking at some time. And I know that that's one of those things that you're building up to, that you need to build your capacity. So with that said, just because there are grants available, one of the things that you also have to prepare for, and it's probably good for me to tell you this now, is that you do need to have the capacity to be able to deliver on the grant that you're applying for. You may have a lot of experience in development. You may have a lot of experience in rehabbing. You may have a lot of experience, which is exactly what they're looking for. But they also want to make sure that the project that you're submitting, the project that you want, that you are able to deliver on a project because you have the team in place and you have the additional funding to cover the operating expenses, and that you have that you actually have a very good grip and feel of the project that you're going to be delivering on, and that you are able to deliver on it. Okay, so I think that that's also extremely important, is that you look at your org chart, look at who you have in place, look at your team. Do you have the right people, the right seats on the bus, the right people on the bus and in the right seats to be able to deliver the project that you are proposing, for them to be able to give you the funding and feel comfortable that, okay, we're going to give this funding to this group, and they have the team in place, they have the experience, they have the additional funding needed to be able to deliver on this project. And we know that when we give this money to them, we are going to see a project in the end that they deliver on. Because another problem that happens often is that funds that they allocate to different groups or organizations or companies sometimes get returned because the group that applied for it was not able to deliver. And so What happens in that instance? If you have a really good relationship with the funder and you already received funding from them, they might give you extra funds. And I had that happen to me often. I would finish a cycle out. I would finish a grant process and I delivered on all my deliverables. We spent down all the funds. The project was completed. And then they came back to me and said, hey, X, Y, and Z organization could not deliver, or they were not able to spend down an additional $150,000. Would you like to take these? And then they would give me the funds and I was able to do more with it. Other times, after years of demonstrating and having the same grant coming through, I was able to demonstrate how well I ran the programs and that we grew and we delivered every time, and our measurable outcomes, we were meeting them every single time and exceeding them. They would come to me and say, hey, we're closing down this agency's program. Can you take on the funding and add additional people to this program? And so that was one way that I was able to grow a lot of my programs and services, was because other organizations had their funding taken away. So, and then because they did not deliver, and then they were reappropriated to another organization or agency. So anyway, I was just filling a little bit of time there, but trying to give you a little bit of information, more information on how you can prepare yourself to be ready to submit for grant applications. All right. David, hi.
Hey, this is awesome. Thank you, Luz.
You're welcome.
I hope that I'm not going to ask you a question that you already covered. As
Okay.
I joined late and then had to step out for a second. But how much can we just hire you and like to go figure out all the grant stuff and then just hand us a nice packaged grant with a bow on it? Or is this something that we work with you so that you make money too?
Yeah,
There's
I like I said, this is my my active income, and this is what I do on the side. Yes, actually I'm available for both. Like I said, I do a retainer package for coaching and guiding you along the process. So if you have your teams, you have everybody in place, and all you need is guidance on how to get there along the way, I provide that. And then I do have another package where it's the done for you, where this is for the investor who, you know what, I want this, but I don't have time for this, and I just don't want to spend any time on this because I really have better things to do. Then that's the other package. And so I only take on a few of those clients because, again, it requires a lot of time and it's going to require a lot more in-depth work per client because I'm doing it all. But yes, I have those available as well.
And would you be paid like as a portion of the grants that are secured?
No, unfortunately, that is looked down upon. You cannot pay a grant writer out of the grant that you are receiving. Okay. What you can do is you can write into the grant for a consultant, and that consultant can be somebody who guides you with, you know, helps you with submitting the project reports, submitting the budget reports, you know, all that comes after, making sure that you're, you know, that you are doing what you need to do for the grant, so that you are providing the grant for everything that they need so you can be in alignment with what they're expecting from you. However, you cannot charge it to the grant. Your initial grant writing process cannot be charged to the grant. So there is an expense, you know, and again, the expense is in staff time, and the expense is also in you paying a grant writer for the service, if that's the route that you're going to go. Again, like I said, if the other option is that if you have teams in place and you have people who can do it, you have people who know how to write well, are detail oriented, that's really all you need. You need somebody who can write well and who knows how to do research and is detail oriented. And then I can help guide that process along if that's the needed, if that's what's needed. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Io, you have another question?
Yeah. Can you, in the future office hours, can we maybe talk about what auditing looks like or what compliance looks like? You know, I know it's a big topic, so I don't want to open it up now, but just curious, like when building out a team, how much to factor that in.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about the auditing process. Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. Yeah. Vanessa, you have a question?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
Hi.
so sorry. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good, good. I was gonna ask the question and then I called that I was expecting come in. I was like, no, wait.
No worries.
So I'm sorry about that. So I've been looking into grants for a couple of months now, and I joined late in the call, and I don't know if you already covered that, but I know that there are grants that you can access for new businesses. Some of them just literally to have the business. Small grants, 2,500, 5,000. Is that something that I already checked on them and working on them? But is that something that I only know about a couple? I don't know if in the grants.gov I will find more of those because I have several new businesses that I have created to help other business that I already have. And then I have other businesses that are already established.
So I would recommend for you. So again, I always start with whatever your niche is or your category or who you're working with. Okay. What problem are you trying to solve? And you're looking at small business assistance, small business grants. I would start with any group that's working with small businesses. I would look for small businesses for women, women-owned businesses, minorities. Those all could they could do loans, but there also could be grants available to help you start your business. I belong to a large network only because I was part of an academy a long time ago, a cohort, the 10,000 small businesses. Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small business SBA. Now I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's through Goldman Sachs. And through there, I see information all the time about funding being made available to small businesses. And many of them go to women and go to businesses owned by minorities. So I would start there. Start doing a search with those topics. Hi, Alexis.
Hey, how are you, Luz? I
I
just
thought
heard
that was
that,
Vanessa, your wife.
and I did
Yes.
that program, the 10KSB, and I have the app,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't know that I was able to search on grants on that app.
Well, I don't know about grants specifically, but I see a lot of the people within the community, within the group, they like to share whenever whenever there are grants available and whatnot. So that's a way to check. It's just another great network that we have access to because we've been part of that.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's something to look into. But I would say start with your with the Small Business Administration. I know I have received a lot of information from my contacts at the Small Business Administration. So check there. Start
Okay.
there.
Okay.
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 May not find as many. You'll probably because it's business, you might find more loans than anything, but you might find some. I would
Okay.
say don't get discouraged until you look into it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This was great. I had wonderful questions, and I hope you can join me in 2 weeks, and we'll cover another topic then. I put on my notes the audit process, and so I will see if I go into that next time. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Bye.